This is Athens Unpacked. I'm Sofka, and in a series of podcasts, I'm continuing my long quest to understand this fascinating city. Athens Unpacked is made for This is Athens, the official visitor's guide to the city. In the first episode, we'll go up one of the more unusual hills to see how Athens sits in its surroundings. It looks like a great crust of whitish buildings, but if you're flying over the city and squint your eyes, this crust clings to the landscape in a way that's quite reminiscent of architecture in the Greek islands. But it definitely doesn't feel like an island when you're in the thick of things. Athens buzzes and growls and rumbles. With over 4 million inhabitants, it's one of the most densely populated cities in Europe. Having gone up, we'll go down, underground. We'll pay our respects to Athens' most public skeleton and visit a hidden aqueduct that's still functioning after almost 2,000 years. Before we get on with the first episode, let me explain a little about myself. I'm a British writer and journalist. Yes, I know, Sofka doesn't sound very English. That's because my father's parents were refugees from the Russian Revolution who ended up in London. My first experiences in Athens were as an anthropology student. I came from Cambridge to do research in southern Greece and used to love having little jaunts to the capital. A decade or so later, I returned and settled here, this time with a Greek husband and our 2 daughters. Here they are, talking in Greek in our kitchen. If you don't speak Greek, they're discussing how some abandoned kittens fostered by my daughter will travel to be adopted in the UK. In the many years I've lived in Athens, I've written about the city in countless articles and in several books. One of these is Eurydice Street, the name of the road where we lived. It explores what it means to be an Athenian and my sometimes pitiful struggles to become a Greek. My adorable sisters-in-law encouraged me along with home-baked spanakopiters, spinach pies. They helped me untangle the awful red tape involved in applying for citizenship. And when I got headaches, they carried out little rituals to remove the evil eye. Since I wrote Eurydice Street, we've moved to Orpheus Street. At least we've managed to stay within the same myth. All cities are complex, but Athens has an especially tangled character. It's spectacularly ancient and undeniably modern. As you walk down the street, it seduces you with its aromas, bitter orange trees in blossom or fresh ground coffee. Then your quivering nose is shocked by a blocked drain or traffic fumes. There'll be lots on Athenian smells in later episodes. Throughout its modern existence, this city has almost constantly been in flux. There's even a neighbourhood called Metamorphosis. With all the dramatic transformations, the tragedies, the triumphs, it's almost like being inside a myth. And ancient Greek mythology remains fresh here. How can you forget that Athena turned Arachne into a spider, when the Greek word for spider is arachne? Also, in the bakery, it'll be Ariadne wrapping your bread or Antigone at the till. Nobody's surprised if Odysseus is driving their taxi or Hercules delivers their post. Just in case you've forgotten how special Greeks are, here's a recording of the legendary Melina Mercouri, actress, activist and politician. In this clip, she's in a 1980s documentary about Athens. Note the crazy street noise.
Greeks are poets, Greeks are fighters, and Greeks are lovers. We do all three well, and sometimes we do all three together.
Some may tell you that the patron goddess of this city is Athena, with her wisdom, purity and sacred owls. But I'd argue it's actually Melina Mercouri. If you don't know her, watch her films like Never on Sunday, which won multiple awards around the world. Listen to her husky, sexy singing and salute the giant photograph of her in the Acropolis metro station. She fought like mad to bring back the Parthenon marbles, but more on that later. Athenians are accustomed to the city's fickle ways. When life shifts, once again, they adjust. Visitors and newcomers find their own approaches. Some are refugees escaping war, but there are also increasing numbers of young artists, business people, and so-called digital nomads who can work from anywhere. Even during the difficult years of the financial crisis, these adopted Athenians found freedoms and creative flowering. Certainly, many of us noticed that there were few better places to be stuck during the COVID lockdowns. Whatever the problems, Athens boasts 300 days a year of sunshine, herb-scented hills for walking, and beaches close by. To get some perspective on the city and its geography, I recommend going up one of Athens' many hills. There are plenty to choose from, but today I've come up to the Tourkovounia, or Turkish mountains. This is a big hill, a great big green lung right in the middle of Athens with incredible views. Not that many Athenians, let alone tourists, come up here, but it really allows you to understand this landscape. There's a park and a little village that makes you feel as if you're a million miles away from the city. And I've come up here to meet Brady Kiesling. I should explain about Brady. He was born in Texas, spent 20 years as a diplomat before resigning in protest against the US invasion of Iraq. He's also an archaeologist, historian and writer who's lived in Athens for many years. Recently, he has developed a remarkable app called Topos Text. This links places in Greece and around the Mediterranean to ancient texts. And he's a keen cyclist who thinks nothing of biking up and down the hills of Athens. So I'm really hoping, Brady, that you're going to help me make sense of this gigantic sprawl. It's spread out before us. Some people say that Athens is an ugly city. I mean, you see it, it's spread out in this incredible sea of pale colours. But do you agree with that?
Athens is a chain of villages linked by ancient cow paths. And if you look at any of the major roads of Athens, you'll see how they take strange turns, because the ancient roads became the modern roads, and they were fossilized, and everyone has little anchors of antiquity, of Byzantine culture, of a really good bakery somewhere. So no, there's nothing ugly. It's just there are a few ugly buildings you have to go past on the way.
Well, somebody described it as an urban octopus creeping and grasping its way up and around the surrounding hills. But help me make sense of the geography. What can we see from up here on the Tourkovounia?
First, octopuses are very nice animals. Secondly, the reason they would come here is this is an earthly paradise. The basin of Athens is gorgeous. On the south, it has the beautiful violet spine of Mount Imitos stretching as far as you can see, now with antennas on top. Next, to the north, is Mount Pendeli. It's about 1,100 meters. It was the source of beautiful white marble, the marble that went into the Parthenon, the marble that went into the British Museum. Then on to further around to the north is Mount Parnitha, a massive mountain range with forests. And then when you look down the mountain to the southwest, you'll see the rock of the Acropolis, which is an amazing ancient fortress by nature, with caves in it, with springs in it, a perfect place for a Bronze Age warrior to build his palace and set himself up as lord of a whole domain.
I waved goodbye to Brady as he set off on his mountain bike. Then I took a wander around the back roads, past villagey houses with vegetable gardens and small holdings with chickens and goats. Being up on the Tourkovounia reminded me of my pet theory, the 3 hills of Athens. It's probably the anthropologist still lurking inside me, but it's as if each hill represents an aspect of being Greek. Hill number 1 is the most famous, the Acropolis. Like the Eiffel Tower for Paris, it's what every tourist expects to see. With the Parthenon still standing after 2,500 years, it has huge significance for the Greek psyche. When the modern state was born in the 19th century, the glories of ancient Greece became a fundamental element for the new Greek identity. All Greeks know about the resistance hero Manolis Glezos, how during the Nazi occupation he climbed up the Acropolis and removed the swastika flag. This hill is almost an embodiment of the nation. The so-called sacred rock is a subject for pride, but sometimes it's a complex inheritance. The Nobel Prize-winning poet George Seferis wrote about the burden of the ancient past in a poem. It's called Mythistorium. I woke with this marble head in my hands. It exhausts my elbow, and I don't know where to put it down. Traditionally, many foreign visitors have been obsessed with ancient Greece, while caring much less about the contemporary country. This isn't always easy for Greeks. And if you think this is an old story that has little to do with today's Athenians, you'd be wrong. You only have to take the Parthenon marbles to see how high passions run. This history is very much alive. And a quick hint, in Greece, we don't call them the Elgin marbles. Lord Elgin is the vandal who hacked them off the Parthenon, the person who took them away from Attica's shimmering light to be locked in the gloomy bowels of the British Museum. Here's Melina Mercouri again, giving a quick idea of their significance.
The Parthenon marbles are our pride. They are our identity. They are today's link with Greek excellence. They are creations synonymous with our concepts of democracy and freedom.
The second hill in my little theory is Lycabettus. It's nearly twice the height of the Acropolis, and I've always loved going up there for coffee and to admire the views. It's a great hike along steep pine-scented paths, but also it's fun, especially for children, to take the little funicular train that rumbles up through a tunnel. On the top is the white church of St. George. So Lycabettus Hill is a good symbol for Christianity and Greece's Byzantine history. Athenians tend to be quite relaxed about religion when it comes to regular church going or worrying about sin. But identifying as Orthodox is definitely a fundamental aspect of being Greek. Few fail to mark the major life events of birth, marriage, and death in the traditional way with a priest. So the Acropolis and Lycabettus are the official twin peaks of the city. The Acropolis with the ancient pagan legacy, and Lycabettus with the Greeks' Christian identity. My third hill is the Tourkovounia, where I met Brady. Its name hints at Athens' 400 years under the Turkish Ottomans. On its summit are simple houses built without planning permission by rural migrants. And for me, this hill represents the village and its ways. It's the unofficial city. Having seen Athens from above, we're now going to take a look at it from below. This is a modern city that was built around the ancient. The two are entwined and inseparable, from the famous fenced-off archaeological sites to the pieces of column that litter the National Garden. Before any new building can be constructed, it requires a permit from the archaeological authorities, and this almost always means an excavation. Look behind the metal hoardings around building sites, and you'll regularly see archaeologists instead of builders. They'll be painstakingly digging, brushing, and pulling out coins, pots, and sculptures. Then they photograph the ancient walls or graves, whatever's going to be covered up again, perhaps forever, by concrete. As you walk around Athens, it's worth remembering that almost every step you take is on top of something remarkable, if not undiscovered treasure. We're starting off in Syntagma, Constitution Square. Even if you're only here for one day, you're unlikely to avoid the absolute centre of Athens. Outside the Parliament building are the Evzones standing guard. All young Greek men have to do military service, whether they like it or not. The army picks the tallest, most impressive youths to become Evzones. You'll see them standing, motionless, hardly blinking, in their fabulous traditional costumes. It doesn't matter if it's a heat wave or a snowstorm or a group of giggling teenage girls trying to kiss them. And one of my naughty daughters recently admitted to having once tried this with her classmates. The only comparably long-legged, upright and stationary males in town are the magnificent Kouros sculptures from the Archaic period, and you can see them displayed in various museums. On the day I visited, it was raining. I'm just next to where the Evzones, the soldiers in their white kilts and white leggings, are guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier. They're inside their little huts, which have sweet blue and white things, a bit like bathing huts on the beach. And they're just about to do the change of the guard, I think, in which is wonderful to see because they do high kicks in their pom-pommed clogs. We've crossed over the road now and come down into the main bit of the square, and we're outside the metro station. When the shiny new metro system was built, just in time for the Olympic Games of 2004, archaeologists kept coming across interesting things, anything from mosaics and marble carvings to burial grounds and baths. What's wonderful in Syntagma is how they've turned what might have been an inconvenience into something beautiful. Right above where you get your tickets and go down to the trains, that's been turned into a small museum, and it gives a fabulous idea of what's going on underneath the city. There are all kinds of different pots and amphorae and that sort of thing, but for me, the most fascinating thing to see is the whole wall, like a cross-section of earth that's underneath the square above. And it's behind glass, and you can see what the archaeologists found. And the most moving thing is a skeleton still in its grave, in its tomb. One side of the marble tomb has been removed, and she's lying in her open sarcophagus. It may seem quite odd passing this person on the way down to the trains. We wonder who she was. She was a woman, apparently, in the 4th century BC. And it seems to me that this kind of intimacy with a life that went on such a long time ago, it's a very touching thing. I like to think of this as the monument to the unknown Athenian woman. I'd love to leave a flower for her. It's impossible because of the glass wall. But it's emblematic, really, of the way that the past exists right alongside the present in Athenian life. One of the most surprising things running underneath our feet is Hadrian's aqueduct. I'm no expert on ancient history, but I have a soft spot for the Roman Emperor Hadrian. I've walked along Hadrian's Wall in northern England. I've admired the Pantheon in Rome. But the thing that really struck me was Marguerite Yourcenar's book, Hadrian's Memoirs. It describes his love affair with a beautiful young Greek man called Antinous. Hadrian's lover met a tragic end, drowning in the Nile, and Hadrian was so distraught that he ordered Antinous to be sanctified as a god. Statues were made, memorials built, and even a city was named after him. If you Google Hadrian, you'll see he's something of a gay icon. But apart from his sad love story, he was a man of energy and passion. There's a bust of Hadrian in Athens' National Archaeological Museum, well worth a visit. He has a confident expression and a fashionably well-groomed beard. Out of his whole massive empire, he was especially keen on Athens. He made several visits and carried out some ambitious projects. Some are still partially intact and are fascinating to see. Among others, Hadrian's Library, Hadrian's Arch, and the Temple of Olympian Zeus. Hadrian's aqueduct is much less well known, but equally exciting. Work began on it in the 2nd century CE, and amazingly, 1900 years after Hadrian was weeping salt tears for his drowned lover, fresh water is still flowing. Athenians relate to what is under their feet in different ways, but one of the most interesting approaches must be that of George Sachinis and his project around Hadrian's aqueduct. I'm going to see George Sachinis to talk about this remarkable construction. George is an employee of the Athens Water Board, AVAP, but he gives masses of energy to a community arts project called Urban Dig. They stage interventions and disruptions in Athenian neighbourhoods, and one of their projects is around Hadrian's aqueduct. We're meeting where the water ends up, in Kolonaiki. This is normally a neighbourhood to visit if you like shopping in fancy boutiques or joining the smart set for coffee. But not today. We're going to Vexameni, or Reservoir Square. It's like an urban oasis on the slopes of Lycabettus. There's a charming outdoor ouzerie or ouzo cafe and one of the loveliest open-air cinemas where you can watch films under the summer stars. During the day, children play and ride bikes past a statue of Odysseus Elytis, who used to meet other writers here. And by the way, he was the second 20th century Greek poet to win the Nobel Prize. And we're sitting here outside in the square now, underneath a beautiful old olive tree with bougainvillea all pink above us. And there's a lovely wall here. This looks to me like it's a Roman wall.
Yes, this was back in the Roman times. This was the place that Athens was getting its water from. Mm-hmm. To be more exact, the Romans who could afford getting water in their saunas and in their baths. So they would get water from this reservoir. And this was also the place where in AD 70, when Athens was rebuilt again and we had the independent Greece creating a new capital, and a lot of water was needed, and this was the place where the first reservoir of Athens was situated, exactly on the foundations of the Roman one.
What's so special about Hadrian's aqueduct is that it's a living monument. The 20 kilometres of tunnel connects various parts of Athens. From the less privileged Menidi in the north, down through middle-class Chalandri, and ending up in expensive Kolonaiki. George's project is trying to link them all up.
Our idea with Urban Dig was we should use this line as an excuse of bringing people together. And we especially like the fact that you cannot see the line, that it's all underground, because it's much more poetic to think of water flowing underneath you. It's a secret river, even man-made, and it can be the source of a lot of creativity.
So you step off the square between some bitter orange trees through a metal and iron gateway. And then there's a doorway that leads you inside the reservoir. Once you're inside, you can hear that it's a very different atmosphere. Wow, this is incredible. It's got this tall vaulted ceiling with columns all the way. You can hear how the sound is echoing like we're going down into Hades. It's really quite something, a very different temperature as well, much cooler inside here. George has brought his ladder and he's taken us to the back of this amazing echoing room, and we're going to climb up and go into something very exciting. We've come inside the tunnel now and we're walking in the water. It's a stone tunnel dripping with water. You can hear it coming down the walls and from the ceiling, making the drip, drip noise. We can see into the darkness with torches, otherwise it's completely black. And this continues underneath us. Who would think it when you're walking along an Athenian street that we have this extraordinary monument right below us? One of the things I love about Athens is you can approach it or live in it in so many ways. I'd had lunch right by the reservoir and had no idea what I was sitting on. The city is built layer upon layer like a palimpsest of all the lives that have gone before us. In this first episode of Athens Unpacked, I've been up above and then down below. In the next episode, I'll jump right into the middle and explore why modern Athens looks as it does now. We'll see how it went from being a two-horse provincial town with some old ruins to the dream capital of newly independent Greece. And then how a very Greek system of part exchange was used to tear that down and replace it with concrete apartment blocks. Some believe this was a practical solution to a housing crisis. Others blame it for almost everything that's awful about Athens. Join me in episode 2 to find out more. I am Sofka Zinoviev, and you just listened to Athens Unpacked for This is Athens, the official visitor's guide to the city of Athens, online at thisisathens.org. You can find all episodes of Athens Unpacked on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of your favourite podcast apps. Athens Unpacked is a production of pod.gr. Thanks to Katerina Bakoyani for her endless support. Producer, Michalis Kamakas. Sound engineer, Chrisa Kurenda. Director of Productions, Elena Dimitraiki. Assistant producer, Lara Papadimitriou. Original theme music by Anna Papadimitriou. This podcast is funded by Greece and the European Union.
Pod.gr. Sounds good.